Good evening, everyone. My name is Carolina Maita, and I'm the communications officer here doing the programming for the Appel Salon. Welcome. I'm very thrilled to see so many familiar faces, and I'm super excited to start off the 2016 season with Gabrielle Hamilton and Ian Brown. I'd like to welcome and thank Meg Wesley in helping to bring Gabrielle Hamilton to the Appel Salon. Originally from Montreal, Meg holds a PhD in drama and began her career as a stage manager working in theaters across the country, including the Stratford Festival. She has also published academic articles and a fantasy novel. She began at the Stratford Chefs School in 1997 as a communications instructor and assumed her current position as program director 3 years ago. Please welcome to the stage, Meg Wesley.
Thank you, Carolina, and thank you so much for hosting this event and allowing us to bring Gabrielle Hamilton and Ian Brown to Toronto. I'm delighted to welcome you all to what promises to be a highly entertaining and informative, of course, conversation between two terrific writers who have both held the position of Joseph Hoare Gastronomic Writer-in-Residence at the Stratford Chefs School. Our interviewer tonight is Ian Brown. As most of you know, Ian is one of Canada's leading writers, a regular feature writer for the Globe and Mail. He has won several national magazine and newspaper awards. He's also published 4 books, perhaps most famous of which, The Boy in the Moon, was a multi-award winning book, a book-length version of his Globe and Mail feature series about his son Walker's rare genetic disorder. His newest book, which has a rather long title, 60, The Beginning of the End, or The End of the Beginning, a diary of my 61st year, was published last year. In this book, Ian explores what being 60 means physically, psychologically, and intellectually, a topic that I, for one, can certainly relate to. I had the very good fortune to spend time with Ian when he was the Stratford Chefs School's writer-in-residence a few years ago, so it is a special pleasure to introduce him tonight, and I cannot imagine a more apt individual to conduct this interview. Gabrielle Hamilton is this year's Joseph Hoare Gastronomic Writer-in-Residence at the Stratford Chefs School. This is her first day with us, and the first of many events in which she will star over the next 2 weeks. In fact, she barely got here about an hour ago into Toronto from New York. Gabrielle is the chef owner of Prune restaurant in New York's East Village and was named Best Chef New York City by the James Beard Foundation in 2011. Her writing has appeared in The New Yorker, The New York Times, Gentleman's Quarterly, and Bon Appetit, among other publications. In 2012, Gabrielle authored the New York Times best-selling memoir, which also has quite a long title, Blood, Bones, and Butter, The Inadvertent Education of a Reluctant Chef. And I would say the subtitle sort of says it all. She also released her first cookbook, Prune, in 2014. Most recently, Gabrielle was featured on The Mind of a Chef, and if anyone has any doubts, the show demonstrates just what a fine mind this chef has. Please join me in welcoming Ian Brown and Gabrielle Hamilton.
Thank you for that very, at least on my behalf, generous introduction. And hello.
Hi. Hi.
Yeah, I can't tell you how excited I am. I've been going through these books obsessively, picking recipes that I know I will fail at, and it's really, I mean, it's clear and everything, but I know I'm going to fail at. But before we get into the book and into your life and into performing a sort of psycho-literary analysis of your being, I want to ask you, where does writing stack up, difficulty-wise, next to the routine of a restaurant kitchen? I mean, is it more like prepping the aioli or more like almost going bankrupt?
I don't think there's anything more difficult than writing.
No, come on. Not breaking that sauce that goes over the sweetbreads?
Unfortunately, that stuff for me is kind of second nature. And the writing I have to really work at. It's not my first job, it's my second job. So if not third, by the time the restaurant is done and the kids are dealt with, the writing comes last. So it's not muscle memory for me. So I find getting the true sentence onto the page still one of the most challenging things on earth to do, where you're not lying or making yourself look good or being glittery for the reader or self-admiring or, oh God, didn't I just capture that? Yes. When you're just true, I find that pretty hard to find. But then when you get there, it becomes sort of effortless, right? Many people speak of that, where you kind of hit the minute where you're like, this is not about me, it's not about anything, I'm just laying it down the way it's truest, capital T truest, and then you're kind of carried along by that.
And what about compared to raising two boys on your own, more or less, as a single
Dude, I'm
mother?
sticking with it. Writing is the hardest.
Okay.
I mean, the boys are hard, and they make you suffer in a different way, and you do suffer in the restaurant in another way. But God, the boys go to bed, and they sleep for 10, 11 hours. I'm very proud that I didn't raise particularly good eaters, but I really raised good sleepers. And the restaurant, it closes for a few hours at night, and the writing just sort of stays here forever. So I still contend
that it's the hardest.
Yeah.
Well,
for me.
you're good at it because they're fantastic books, and the memoir, which is what I'm going to be talking about, is thrilling, and it lays out these formative experiences that made you a great chef, and maybe a great writer too, but we'll get to that. But it starts with this fantastic account of your father's annual outdoor lamb roast, a piece that appeared in the New Yorker. And he seems to have given you a love of hospitality, even though he didn't have any money, which must be handy for a restaurant owner.
He had a acute sense of theatricality, and he himself has a generosity beyond. So those two things together, the kind of attention to detail that when the guest arrives, there should be either wood smoke wafting out of, hopefully, the fireplace, not the oven, but...
not the ears of the chef.
Or just mown grass, the sense of that. So he was attuned to smell and lighting and what the guest would see upon arrival for a dinner party. And yeah, the mise en scène, he was a theatrical designer. So he had a lot of eye for the visual. But he himself was also very generous. So there was no sort of dinner for two. It was always like, let's roast the whole animal and let's have 100 people come over and, oh, your friend should come. So I get a lot of that from him. And then I have a mother who was quite the opposite, and I got a lot of her too.
Well, that was my next question. So there you are in sort of rural Pennsylvania, and your mother is French. She's a brilliant chef. She's a perfectionist. I made a list of things that she is. She's very demanding. She teaches you to forage, among many other, to eat clover, to forage for chanterelles in the woodlands of Pennsylvania. And yet, and I'm not, challenging you here, but it's her who obviously is, you even look a bit alike. It's her you don't speak to for 20 years.
And ticking. I think we're probably on 35 now.
Oh, really? But you did have one visit after your boys were born. Yeah, which you write about.
Man, I was here for this book. I'm having this incredible deja vu. Yes. My mother was a dancer, a ballet dancer, and she was extremely disciplined, and she was an exceptional home cook. So we learned how to eat from her and how to set a table. I feel very glad to have learned sort of what I think are called domestic arts, that I know how to cross-stitch and polish the silver and iron the linen and wipe the dust off the big plants and water the flowers and keep a home going. And also her parents were products of the war, so she had that kind of save the food mentality. So just carving the rotten bit off of the cheese and eating what was good and repurposing the stale bread and throwing nothing away.
So you're not eating meal helpers in your house or anything like that?
Ever. I mean, we had to beg to go over to our friends' houses for that sort of packaged product or, sugar crap, television, hugs.
So do you... I mean, you are very like her then. I mean, it becomes... You're an exact replica.
I have really downloaded both of them. This isn't a word, equiproportionally. You'll go with me on that one. I really have a lot of him, and I have a lot of her. And oh, God. Yeah, I'm going to stop there.
So all right, so I won't press why you don't speak to her. I mean, it's you say in the book that it's just easier to do it alone.
No, I've been thinking about it a lot. I don't know. It's funny. I really want to start a club because I think it makes people very uncomfortable to meet people who don't speak to their parents. And I really don't have a relationship with any single human in my family. And I don't know, do I seem nervous to you?
No.
Or angst-ridden? Is dandruff coming off of me? I'm not scratching my legs. I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah.
And
yeah. You mention in your book that your mother had a bit of a temper, that she could go off. I mean, it made me want to ask you, do you have a temper in the kitchen, or are you, I mean, you're a pro, so I presume you don't, but do you ever, you talk about having low blood sugar and getting to a certain point in a busy night where you start to melt down.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't have blood sugar issues anymore. I'm dying to talk about 60, but I'm 50.
Of course you're willing to talk about 60 and 50. Everybody is. It's when you're 60 you don't want to talk about it.
I didn't know about some bodily changes, but one of them is that I don't have the hypoglycemia anymore. I don't know what happened, but my appetite and voracious need to have food all the time has changed.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
The sex drive is next. Don't worry.
Well, that'll be perfect for whatever my body's doing at the time. I'll be like, no one will want me. Anyway, I don't have a temper in the kitchen. I have never modeled myself after the chefs that ream the cook. From what I can see, the people who enter the kitchen, or my kitchen, the people who are working there, are frankly working their freaking butts off, and they want so much to do well. And I don't understand the logic of humiliation or kind of obscenity. It's not, I just want to give the people what they need to keep succeeding as best as I can. If I've asked you sort of 3 times to do something that you're now just kind of not doing because you don't feel like it, then I don't even get that mad. I just say, well, we're done. It's very clear. At first you didn't know, and I told you. Then maybe you needed to be reminded, but the 3rd time, then you're just telling me like, I don't really want to do it your way, and that's fine, but then go work somewhere else. So it's not very angry. It doesn't require yelling.
Uh-huh. There's a fantastic, I will leave this subject in a moment, but there's a fantastic section part in this book where you talk about learning to cut, I think it's a brisket, across the grain. And your mother, you didn't know that when you began. Your mother didn't actually tell you. She just lasered into your skull with her disapproving eyes to make you learn it.
Yeah, I was cutting a corned beef, and I actually cut the crap out of my finger, which I still have a scar from, and I brought it to her, and I passed out, and she was scolding me as I was falling to the ground in my bloody state, but I learned.
I'm beginning to understand the silence now. Yeah.
She had a lot of kids. She was tired.
You did not come to be the chef owner of Prune, and a huge influence in North American food, through the usual cooking school, staging route. You quit high school, I think, at least for a while, and certainly take a job as a dishwasher at the age of 13. You end up working as a waitress in the Lone Star Cafe in the 80s. I remember the Lone Star Cafe in the 80s. It was you're doing coke a lot. You almost get arrested. What was that all about?
Yeah, no, I didn't quit high school. And actually, I want to just say about my mother, because I'm writing another book, and I don't like this monotonous or monochromatic portrait of a human. And she's also the most deeply affectionate and sensual and very funny woman. And I appreciate those qualities tremendously and inherited some of them also. And when I do write her portrait in a space that has more room than this book did, because it was so focused on cooking and food, and that's how I understood the project of this book to be, that it had to be about food. I had to just sort of bring her in as a kind of character who introduced me to eating and cooking and a kitchen and how to work and how to clean and how to be. But there is opportunity for a much richer, almost forensic portrait there that I'm heading towards. So let's ease up on the lady. She was like all of us, many things, and still is still living, and is perfectly complicated.
Yeah.
And I'm just happy to not be near her.
As you make very clear in the book.
Yeah. Well, not clear enough. It was a first book, but I'm a lot older and a better writer since then, and I think I can do a better job in this project. The path that I took to the chef is I didn't quit high school. I graduated a little bit early. I skipped a couple of grades.
That's right. Yeah, I'm
and
sorry.
I moved to New York City, and my family had completely imploded at the time. So I was on my own at a very young age, and I was a dishwasher, and I got a waitress job at the Lone Star Cafe in New York, and it all just sort of built eventually to always in a restaurant setting, and then eventually to have my own.
Right.
But there was no formal training. I'm going to Stratford, hopefully, to learn the 5 mother sauces.
Right. But what was the scam that you were running? How does that work?
Well, I don't think it could happen anymore because there's so much micros and POS systems, point of sale systems that are electronic, and everyone pays now with plastic. But it was a cash and carry business, and we would bring the drinks to you or the food, and you would pay me, and I would pay my bill to the bar at the end of the night. So everything I asked the bartender for, he would give to me. It would be rung up on a ticket or not. And then we owe the house together less than what we sold. So you and the bartender have to be kind of in a game together where you get your full tray of drinks and he's only rung up a glass of wine on your ticket. And now we only owe the house a glass of wine at the end of the night. But I have a pocket full of your cash for the 14 shots of bourbon and the 8 Manhattans or whatever that you drank.
That sounds about accurate, actually. And so I see, and you almost get caught doing this, and it causes you to...
I get caught, and I happen to have been hired underage. I lied about my age, and so I was charged with grand larceny and possession of stolen property, and I got out of it because I was underage, and a lawyer advised me to sort of clean it up and get myself together and either enroll in college or volunteer in a hospital, something sort of civic-minded or engaged, something not heading toward wayward youth, which I was sort of on the cusp of. I was 16 at the time. And there was a very strong chance of being in a reprobate program, a juvenile delinquency program, which would sort of last on your record forever. And so I saw that and didn't want that and got myself together.
Uh-huh. So there's so much to talk about. I have to speed over certain
Please,
parts.
yeah.
You'll be very happy to hear. So you spent more than a decade in these, as you describe them, soulless catering kitchens, longing to leave it all behind. But when you finally get into Michigan State to get your MFA, your Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing, the first thing you do is you get a job in a kitchen. So what was it about the writing world that was so disappointing when you had only writing to do?
Yeah, I had quit the catering world and applied to graduate school, which I think many people do when they're sort of hitting 30. We should go through all of them, 40, 50, 60.
70, I think, is a good one, too.
And I got to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and at first was maybe levitating practically with the augustness of just even the buildings themselves and the oriental carpets and the brass banisters and the marble steps, and very different from the linoleum flooring and the fluorescent lighting of a catering kitchen. It was so profound, and I felt so honored. And then after a little bit of time, too much time in classes where it was sort of so theoretical and so esoteric and so minute and granular on what I derided as the sort of post-Hegelian moment conversation. And I was like, a post-Hegelian moment? What is a post-Hegelian moment? I know Bernays, I know, marinara. I mean, not to be so pitting town versus gown, but it did seem pretty isolated and impractical. And the thing that I had apart or differently than my peers was actual life lived. And I cherished it very much, and I knew I could have more of it, and I needed a job back in a kitchen. So I maintained a kitchen job all through graduate school, which I found very compelling and still do, even the way they act as antidote to each other. I get bored in a kitchen, of course. Like, I have a brain that wants to run and jump. And if you're always in the kitchen, just sort of, you know what a kitchen is like? It's very funny and dirty. And I mean, we make a lot of dirty jokes, and it's crude. It's kind of crude. And your concerns as a chef are often quite about manual, practical things, a schedule, the money, plumbing.
It's physical.
Yeah, it's kind of factory-like in a way. I mean, depending on the size of the kitchen, if you're making 200 of the same thing over and over and over again. So it's very physical. Anyway, so I like the way that they act as antidote to each other, to go to the page and let your mind sort of open up and go deeper into the things it has to offer, and not just, did I order enough parsley for tomorrow?
So the other thing you do before you open your restaurant, this improbable place and this tiny restaurant, is you travel. You go all around the world in your early 20s. You go to France, you work in a creperie, you go to Greece, you spend 6 months in Greece, 7 months in Turkey, a month in Thailand. I mean, and you're always around food. One of the interesting things you write about is that you have very little money, so you're always hungry. And you say that hunger has been as useful to you as your knife skills. How so?
Well, I didn't have the correct credentials for opening a restaurant in New York City, and I found myself opening a restaurant in New York City, so I was sort of scrambling for my experience and my non-existent resume for what I had to qualify me. And if anything, I know what I want to eat, when I want to eat it, and I think that is a leg up on many people, and I feel very happy telling you what you want to eat also based on genuine hunger. But that's what is very true about Prune Restaurant, that it is not a place to go if you're looking to have your mind blown or your evening's entertainment laid out for you. If you want us to do the whole work of your evening, it's not the right place. But I feel like my skill set is I can feed you very delicious, satisfying, gratifying food for all of your appetites. And I can curate from deep in the bench of classic dishes. For us, it's in the Mediterranean idiom. I don't cook from the Asian school or anything because I don't know it well enough, and it's not really what Prune aims to be. But I can find things that you don't know about that I've eaten in situ, if you will. Like, oh, I can show you some lamb that I had in a village in Greece, which is the one time that year that the villagers had meat. So I can bring that to you, and it's a different way. Anyway, that's what we have to offer, just tasty food.
Right. No. I'm with you completely. So what did you bring from the creperie in Brittany?
Oh, I mean, I learned so much there about, in particular, they had cider that was cellar temperature, and I didn't know what that meant. Now I think that's very common to talk about having your wine in a cellar, but this was literally in a stone cellar, and the temperature was neither cold nor warm, but a kind of cool, and that was a revelation about red wine drinking, also what we mean by room temperature or cellar temperature. Also that the eggs were left out all day long in the kitchen and not refrigerated at night. Also the lettuces, so that the salad was not cold and crisp in American style. I don't know in Canada if it's that way. But
very cold and crisp in Canada, yeah. Especially today.
That things relaxed to room temperature. I think that was a big, it made an impact on me there.
Huh. You tell a great story about showing up in Greece. And I guess these are friends of your mom's or
Sister.
That she's, and your sister, whose name she's given you. You show up in Greece and you've been traveling and you're exhausted, and this guy makes what sounds like a smoothie and a bit of a meal, and you say it's the best. Do you remember that meal?
Well, I think, is it Briat Savarin, or who has said that appetite is the best seasoning? And I don't really know what the meal was. The fact is I found myself, I do, it was some bread, and he fried eggs in olive oil, and they had yolks that were as orange as, the setting sun, and he blended apple and milk and honey. But the fact is that I had not eaten in several days. I had very, very, very little money, and I had it in traveler's checks, and there was no ATM or debit card, and it was obviously way pre-cellular telephone or any thing like that. So it was the kind of travel at the time where if you passed from Brindisi in Italy, just passing through to get to the island in Greece, did you want to waste a whole traveler's check to have some Italian lira in your possession so you could buy a sandwich for the 3-day bus ride? Like me, not really, because then what am I going to do with this crappy currency? And so I would just sort of make these long journeys and sort of sit very quietly like a turtle or a bear in hibernation and wait to get to the next place.
It sounds more like The Revenant than it does. Go on, sorry. There you were, in a state of semi-hibernation.
I know. You would never know that I'm good-humored and lighthearted.
Yeah.
But to arrive and have someone not even ask you, frankly, if you're hungry or what they can do for you.
Just give it to
I'm going to make you something to eat. And it was unspeakably good, if for no other reason than those two things coming together. My appetite and his hospitality without asking. It's something I still live by to this day. I invite people to dinner, even if it's in another restaurant, and I'm just, this is what we're going to eat, and it's going to sit in front of you, and I'll pay. It's such a gift, I think, and I would never sort of bring my own. I don't really eat anchovy, or I can't eat apple. I would just eat everything that was offered to me.
Well, this is interesting because, and I wanted to ask you about it because your definition of hospitality is, as you say, just take care of everything. And as I was reading it, it's fantastic. No one is ever going to come into my house again, and I'm not going to offer them something to eat.
Oh.
It won't be like coming into your house, but it's an act
to be
of kindness.
opinionated and to offer something is, I think, the most generous thing you can do.
But then you say that you raise this interesting issue in this regard, and that's the impediment, not of food allergies, but of food preferences, which are based not on hunger or yearning, but say on politics or on some intellectual decision that's made. And you seem to think, you imply that it's maybe part of you speculate as to whether it's part of a bigger issue in North American society, in Western society. But what do you do about somebody who says, I don't eat whatever because of A, B, C, D, or E, my personal politics? I mean, does it get in the way, or are you big enough spirited to get around it and knowledgeable enough, I guess?
Well, I think, I'm bent to take care of people. I would like to feed you and clean up after you. That is what I am driven to do. I don't want to hurt you or kill you or harm you in any way.
Very reassuring. That's nice.
If that's what we're doing, then game on. Tell me, oh my God, tell me what hurts you. I will not do it. There's another game going on, and I'm not quite sure what it is. So there, for instance, I know a lot of dairy or gluten or sort of allergy needs that are strict through the savory, but as soon as the dessert course arrives, everybody's willing to have a bad night in the bathroom, I guess, for the sugar. And I don't, that's one I don't really like to participate in. It's, if it's pick and choose when you're allergic or when it's not convenient for you, that's not fun for me to participate in very much. But the other thing is, frankly, we've been talking about this at my restaurant a lot. I am an old dog, and I have cooked a certain way for a very long time, and I'm very good at it. And I eat this way. I cook like I eat. I eat everything. I'm an omnivore, and I don't know how to make the pasta with a different rice flour, or it's just not in my skill set, and I'm not particularly driven to become skilled in that way. It's so there are many places to eat, and Prune maybe will not be one of them for large dietary restrictions for people.
Right, right. So all of this brings you to what were you going to say?
I'm flinching, but it's pretend. I actually, I'm not apologetic about it. I feel very fine. It's like, I would love to cook what I can for you to the best of my ability, and if we're not the right place for you, we're not the right place.
Yeah. No, frankly, you had me at... you had me at you want to feed me and clean
not
up
hurt
and
you.
clean up after me. I was totally sold at that point.
Oh, I mean, it is my greatest pleasure to work in a restaurant, if for no other reason than someone makes family meal every day. To be relieved of the burden of having to feed oneself day in and day out, I think is the gift of all gifts. And I never complain. And often the family meal is pancetta scrap every other day. I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to do with this pancetta scrap? But I'm just like, thank you so much. Thank you. Because there's a meal out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't have to cook it.
It is actually my favorite part of Prune, which is the cookbook, is the family meal section at the end. It's just, I mean, we could spend the whole hour talking about
family
that.
meal?
Yeah, but we won't. No, so you come with these ideas about hospitality, about cooking the things that you grew up with, that these incredible memory, they're almost sense memory experiences, these dishes that gave you this deep satisfaction for all kinds of, you want to start a restaurant like that has 30 seats in 1999 on the Lower East Side, which is not a happy neighborhood in 1999. You walk in and it's covered in rat shit. I mean, how the hell do you convince investors to go for that?
Ironically, the investors, I think, were hunting for a cook who would be willing to come. So it was, there was a guy who had the lease, and I had to put up some, what's called serious money to show that I was really in and not going to leave at any time. And I did that using my good old grand larceny and possession of stolen property skill set, where I just kind of, is it sort of like check kiting, where you say to the first investor, you're my last $5,000. If I'm so good, if I could just have $5,000 more, I'm in. And that would actually be your first check. And then you go to the next guy and say the same thing. And so eventually I put together I think I needed 50 grand to get in. But you lie. I mean, by the time, I think by the time you're investing in a restaurant, I'm imagining that you're not in it for the money, because if you want to make money, you would go to the chemical industry or tech or banking.
Hedge fund,
yeah, but you don't go to a restaurant. It's a passion project. Restaurants are very hard work. They're volatile. They go out of business all the time. Nobody invests in a restaurant because they think they're going to get their money back. And when they do, it's a brilliant surprise. In the same way that we don't go to work in restaurants because we're going to get rich. No one works in a restaurant except for waiters, to make money. If you're in the back of the house, you're doing it because it matters very much to you, and there's nothing else you would probably do.
Can we talk a little bit about money and the whole business, because I know you like that stuff.
Money?
In the book, you claim to gross $2 million a year at Prune. That's on 30 seats.
Yeah, Prune is an extraordinary creature in that with only 30 seats, and I don't know when I wrote that, in 2008 or 9, but the restaurant has in fact gone on to gross. It had certain years. There was a year that was like 3.2 and 2.8, and so it has grossed enormous amounts of money. And then we have very large operating costs also. So I've never been able to make that sort of 10%. A couple of years I have made the 10% off of that, where, I have $100,000 that I get to give to the investors or take home or put back into the restaurant and build a new walk-in. So it's always a calculus like that. The past few years, we have not done that much business, and I think everyone knows New York had a hard time. I think everyone had a hard time. So now I'm very glad that we pay all of our bills. We've lost a little money last year. I think we did a whole year of business and lost $6,000. So that's like going to work not only for free, but giving it away, but we're still here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Everybody got paid. Everyone will get paid. So it's not always money making.
So there must be dishes. Is that a signal? Does that mean something's going to go dark or end? Or okay. Does that mean there are dishes you cannot serve? Things that are too expensive to serve that you can't make enough of a profit on? Do you have to moderate your menu that way?
I think because we started out that way, I remember when we were opening and we hadn't yet opened, I remember being visited by a vendor of truffles who looked at my menu and the restaurant and left the appointment 4 minutes after he arrived. And we would never be good enough for them. And there have been wine importers and producers from whom I have to beg for an allocation because we're not a restaurant that can, in fact, just give me the whole growth of 214, okay? Like, I'll take the whole year for 2012. Like, we beg for our allocations of things. But as a result, my tastes, I've never had the kind of money to always live on the lobster and the best champagne or the truffle. So my tastes have always kind of shifted left of center, and I like seps and I like shiitake mushrooms. It's not really truffle, but if I put salt on it, brown the butter, like pretty tasty. And I like chicken liver and I like monkfish liver. It doesn't have to be foie gras. And I like monkfish and not lobster. So my tastes have always been a little Gap instead of Barney's, or like Salvation Army clothing instead of the Bendel. So I am already geared that way.
Uh-huh.
And it helps with the economy of the restaurant.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about your marriage?
Which one? Oh.
The one in here.
Yes.
Okay. So you've had a vibrant personal life. And you've dated and lived with women. You got married to this guy, and you know this is all your personal business. But the question I want to ask you is, you're a brilliant writer, and like most brilliant writers, you're brutally honest. Not brutally honest, but you are. Very, very finely honest about things, and you are finely honest about your husband, Michele. So, what I want to know is, how did he react to that beautifully butchered piece of flesh that is the writing about him?
Well, I gave the book to Michele. I had been writing the book for, it probably took me 4 or 5 years to write the book. And in that 4 or 5 years, Michele never asked me once to see the work or asked me how the work was going or what the work was. And so we didn't have that kind of relationship. He wasn't interested in me or what I was doing. And
Just notice how subtle that is.
no, it was not a thing that we shared. We didn't share much of anything, and
I know. It's sad. I mean, it's lonely.
It's brutally
lonely.
sad. It's brutally, brutally sad, viciously sad, and when I was about to publish the book, I sent the book to every single person who appears in it. My mother, my brothers, my employees, anyone who appears in the book got a copy of the book long before it was published, let alone printed, and had the opportunity to vet the pages. And I made all the changes that people asked me to make. I have a brother with some drug use that he wished to not have mentioned, and we took it out. He's now dead, And so I didn't mention it at the time, and I feel free to say so now. And Michele, who had not read the book, I gave it to him electronically, and he called me about 15 minutes after I'd hit send, and he said, "I've read the book." So you know what he had done. He Google searched his own name in the manuscript and found out where he appeared and responded to those things. So I think that's how he responded. He didn't read the book. I'm sure he has since, and he's been very proud of the work, I think, or publicly he has been. But he asked me to change a couple of things. So did his family in Italy, asked me to change a couple of things. And I obliged happily. It is not that kind of book where you want to shame or disgrace or openly harm or getcha kind of book at all. It's very honest. I don't think there's any reason to, I can't think of any benefit to not tell the truth to each other, which I say all the time. And I think I would benefit all the time if people would be very frank and clear about their life experiences of marriage, of parenthood, the things that we can't say as mothers about our children, about the way we feel about parenting, our own ineptitudes, about how we feel in our marriages. Like, I wish we would speak just quite clearly with each other and, frankly, ourselves. It would help out. It would be so generous and hospitable, I think, in fact. I think it would.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't,
yeah, I agree.
as I've said many times in these interviews, because people comment on the honesty in the book, is I was no more brutally honest on anyone who appears on it than I was on my own self. And I was willing to reveal others and what they say or do as much as I was willing to reveal my own self unattractively and the aspects of me that are really, frankly, not that tasty. And they're there. Mm-hmm. So it was sort of equal opportunity employment there with the honesty.
I've never actually read, I can't think of another description of a marriage that is like this one, that is so searing and yet balanced at the same time. But it did make me want to ask, I mean, you have your two boys, and presumably that kept your marriage going for a long time. And then there's his mother, who is a great cook herself in Puglia, and you go there. I mean, was she
who I wanted to be married to?
Yes. That's what I thought.
She was big, Alda, who died a couple of years ago. Yes, I know all this now. I didn't know it at the time, but I wanted to recreate and reinsert myself into a family that terrifically resembled the one that I had come from, and my own had imploded and disappeared so prematurely. And mine had been bright and brilliant and intoxicating, I thought, and it just shattered and disappeared at a very young age for me, or maybe not that young. I was 10, 11, and regardless of whether it was a young age or not, I experienced it as a kind of like, whoa, where is everybody? This was so great, and it's all over already. So a kind of lifetime of how can I get back to that wonderful thing? And so I created it in my restaurant, and it's kind of a proxy family and has a lot of the same wonderments and deliciousnesses and sensualities and affections and bonds, and I have remained in it steadfastly and haven't left it for longer than I had my own originating family. So Prune has been in existence for 16 years. I knew my own family for 10, 11, 12, something like that. So it has a kind of enduring, like, oh, this is home, and it's steadfast. And then Alda and that whole Italian family was very familiar. 6 kids, and she was the sort of matriarch, not sort of, the matriarch of the family. She cooked beautifully, and it was the table that I always wanted to sit at, the kind of Italian postcard. You've seen it in wine commercials. It's like the children are running around and the food is laden on the table and the wine is being poured, the sun is shining, and it has an intoxicating kind of attraction for me, and I wanted to insert myself into it. And eventually I really wanted to become her. As she began to fail, and our bond was quite tight and real, and my skills were exactly commensurate with hers. I loved to do the things that she loved to do, to cook the dinners and have the sip of wine and drink the coffee in the morning and drive the car fast. And I was like, Alda, man, I am the person who, I'm your understudy. And it never happened, obviously. I mean, I divorced and she died, and my kids, they went back to Italy last year, and it turns out that they don't even have Sunday lunch anymore. Because I was showing them a picture in the book to my kids. I was like, oh, look, the book came out, the cookbook, and this, look at this. And they were looking at it puzzled. Mm. And I said, what's wrong with you guys? And they said, well, what is this? I was like, are you kidding? This is Alda's lunch table in her apartment in Rome. And they're like, oh, they don't set the table anymore. There's no lunch in Rome. And I was like, oh, no.
Yeah. You were also brave enough to rearrange her kitchen, which, in my experience of mother-in-laws, that's a terrible, terrible mistake. like a really, really big error.
I think the whole relationship with Aldo was unique in mother-in-law relationships. That no one I've ever met, maybe no one, has ever felt very loving toward their mother-in-law. It's usually adversarial and competitive, and the wife usually feels quite thumbed down, but I did not have that experience at all. I bathed in her, I relished her, I really loved her, and I think she loved me.
Yeah, that's very clear. How much time do I have left? Yeah, okay, I thought so. Was that,
you were feeling like...
I would be wearing a watch, but every time every watch I own seems to break, and so I don't know. I think time is telling me something. I have one last thing I want to ask you about. What is so clear in these books and in your love of food, and when you go on television, etc., is the pleasure that food brings you, not just in the eating, but in the community of its making, as you've mentioned, and in the continuous regimen, the continuous daily regimen of making and cleaning, and as you say, doing it all over again the next day and looking forward to that. And so in preparing for this interview, I looked at a recent episode of The Mind of a Chef, which is the Anthony Bourdain show, which, if you haven't seen, is absolutely brilliant. And one of the best episodes of it is an episode I saw in which you are making the brown butter sauce that goes over the sweetbreads. Mm. And a chef has already tried it and has failed, and you want to get it the first time. You don't want it to break, and you're working and working, and you taste it, and it works. And when it worked, and I am ashamed to admit this, I started to cry. Today, like at the Globe and Mail. Nobody has cried at the Globe and Mail in 150 years, And I'm sitting there quietly sobbing because could make this sauce in your earlobe, with one finger. But you make this thing, and I started to cry, and I wanted to ask you, why did I start to cry? Dr. Hamilton.
I love it.
No, I'm quite. I guess what I'm asking is, what is it about lovingly made food, about this habit of going back and doing the same thing again? It's almost like it's the salve for an addictive personality, and in that regard, it's exactly like writing. I mean, if you're a writer and you don't write, you walk around thinking, I'm useless, my life is worthless, what am I doing, why haven't I had more success? If you write every day, it could be stuff you throw in the garbage, but you never you always want to go back to it. So what is it about cooking, about writing, which I think they're the same process, that is so moving?
I think there's something to be said about just, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but to show up and do the work thoroughly to the best of your ability every time, regardless of the outcome, because I don't think that you're always cooking with love, frankly. If you're going to cook day in and day out, and you're going to wipe the counter down at the end of the night and salt the boards and put the pans away and sweep the floor, you know, there are a lot of days where you're sort of grinding your freaking molars in the back of your jaw with hatred or all the feelings that you have. Same with writing. You can have some pretty rough days with the page. But to, I don't know, maybe it's just the act of bringing yourself back every day, repeatedly, to what can be a rather brutal experience, for those moments when, oh, it's so beautiful, and it's so sweet and tasty, and it worked. Maybe that is what's moving you.
So it's a routine of hope, in other words, an act of hope.
It's funny because I actually have a strong antipathy to a condition of hope. I find hope one of the most abject states of desperation.
So much for that question.
I know. Tomorrow it will be better, or if I could just get somewhere else, it would be better. I actually find it very important to be right exactly where you are in the moment, and try and love anything that you can. And I think in the kitchen, I've spoken about this a lot. It's like, it can be a very long day, and it can be very rough on your body, but you just sort of have those little minutes where, you know, your hand is going down into that cool, silky bin of flour as you're measuring out something, and you're like, that's pretty nice. Or you hear the chatter of your waiters and bussers arriving, and they're at the espresso station, and they're loving each other, and they're chattering, and it's like, that's pretty good. That's nice. There's some camaraderie here, and everybody feels safe and happy. And so, you know, you sort of parse these little moments out of a day. I don't know if that's hopeful. I actually find it not hopeful. I find it very real. It's not aspirational for another day.
Let's see. Well, I think it's almost the same thing, in that you're, maybe hope is the wrong word, but it's worth doing every day, and it must be worth doing for some reason.
Have you ever? This is going to get really deep and dark here, but
we've been there, don't we?
If you are alive, it's worth doing. If you have the gift of health and life, like. Then just stay here and take it and do it take life as it is. But I mean, I'm just like, I would never kill myself, right? Because I would never say no to this experience, even though this experience can be very, very difficult.
Right.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, let's end. We gotta
Okay.
go. It's so bad. And we have questions, and yeah.
Why did you call it Prune?
Oh, the restaurant is called Prune because it was my nickname as a child, and I had spent many gruesome years in kitchens that had nothing to do with the food I grew up with, in sort of industrial or high-end, high-volume catering kitchens where food was touched by no fewer than 10 or 12 people before it ever made it to the guest, and we kept things in big proofing cabinets, or it would go into the back of a refrigerated truck and go for 300 miles out to a wedding at a beachside site. And when I opened my restaurant, I wanted none of all that manipulation. I just wanted it to go from the pan to the plate to the customer, and maybe my two hands were the only things that would have touched it. And so I wanted to go back to what I grew up with, and so that was the name of the restaurant. It was my nickname as a child. It's a very bad name for a restaurant.
No,
of
no, I
course.
think it's a good name.
I mean, it has all the geriatric and poop
No,
connotation, but
it's actually quite unique. Thank you.
Hi there. My question is more about, because your restaurant, you've had it for so long. In Toronto, there's been a lot of restaurants that recently have made big changes, renovations or changing style of menu, going from a tasting menu to something more casual. I'm just wondering if you could talk about the evolution of your restaurant, where you see things going.
yeah, that's so interesting. I opened the restaurant that I knew I could cook in for the duration, and I didn't open a trendy restaurant, and I opened a classic. I work within the classics and always have, and it always is the food that I want to eat and will always want to eat. And so I've never had to reconceptualize or change Prune ever. The dishes change, but the style of cooking remains classic and rooted in tradition. And it turns out that if you just sort of dig deep down into, as I've said at the beginning, what already exists, it can seem like, oh my God, what is this new trend that you have rye cracker and you're using the whole animal? Like, anyway, farm to table, things that seem so trendy and new. So I've never had to reconceptualize in any way. It's kind of an evergreen topic, if that's the right term. And I think if you're changing your concept, that must smell very deathly and scary to the world. I think, right? You've become accustomed to the restaurant down the street being a tablecloth place, and then suddenly they're like, no, we have a burger. Bring your kids. Yikes.
How do you keep that sense of hospitality that you talk about, wanting to please people, when you're in the kitchen and you're in a restaurant as opposed to a home? How do you get that pleasure of welcoming people? Do you have the direct connection with the patrons? Do you get a lot of positive feedback from restaurant reviews? How do you get the feedback that you want from being in the hospitality business without having necessarily all of the welcoming parts of having somebody sit at your own table?
It just so happens that I am made whole and content by doing the work itself, and I am not looking for the feedback. So I feel very well when I cook and clean and provide, regardless if I hear anything. It could be crickets and tumbleweed, as they say. However, I do work in an open kitchen, and I can see what's happening in the dining room, and that is very gratifying, but most so when I'm being ignored. I feel so delighted when I hear peals of laughter coming from some table up in the front who aren't talking about what I've done or what did the chef put here. They're talking to each other, and they're deep in some conversation. There's just enough good food and good wine to let them have their commune, if you will, and I'm like, that feels good. So I don't know
how you get, as somebody who's a home cook only, if I have people over to dinner, I am exhausted by the time I sit down, and I don't enjoy the meal. I might have enjoyed part of the cooking, but I don't know how you get past that sense of this is a chore. You have to get this done, and then actually move to enjoyment of it.
Why are you having people over? No, it's real. I mean, why are you having people over and cooking for them if you don't enjoy it?
I enjoy the cooking, but I'm sure everybody else in this room will share the experience of having been exhausted by the experience of it. And so
it's funny.
maybe
I wonder if
takeout chicken
you're.
would be the thing to have.
This sort of goes back to earlier. If you put out something, just here's a cocktail, and I made some soup, or I bought a pizza.
Yeah, no, I think
you would have such a better
joy.
time. And
Yeah.
I'll be right over, so whatever you're doing. And I'll be really grateful.
But are you enjoying the cooking as much as the people enjoying the eating? Okay, thanks.
Of course.
Not close enough yet. Hi there.
Hi.
Working in hospitality, and I actually work on the HR side of things. We speak to our staff about finding balance within this industry and finding a true career. What would you say to chefs, anybody actually getting into this industry, about finding balance, and what do you do? Because you seem very well-rounded and grounded, and that, to be honest, is not something that's as common as we would like in this industry.
Balance, I gave up on that a long time ago. I really did, and I think it was one of the greatest things I ever did, that I stopped living in resistance to the facts in front of me. And the facts were that there will be no even-keeledness or balance. And it came early with the concept of sleep. And when you go to bed very late, it's 2 o'clock, and you know you have to get up at 6, and you're looking at the clock, and your body is just, and I literally, I don't know if it's a mind game or what, but I just thought, oh man, I'm gonna have a 4-hour nap. Check me out. When's the last time you had a 4-hour nap? And I could sort of change my mind and say, like, that's luxurious and incredible, and a 4-hour nap is so incredible. And so I'll be tired tomorrow. But also in everything that, it's not, I'm not saying it helps out completely. Like, I have deep lament about what I have not experienced with my children. But I'm not going to exacerbate an already deep lament with further, it should have been different, or I could, it's just like, that's what it was.
But do you think changing the norm for the future of hospitality is something that's important? Having people for the next 20 years spend their time with their children and not feel like they've missed out on that, but still be able to have an avid career in hospitality?
Yeah, it's clearly on the agenda. How can you have babies and work in a restaurant? How can you call out sick and work in a restaurant? It's a unique job in that your work will not be waiting for you on your desk when you get back to it. It has to happen now and today, and your body has to provide it. I don't know how that's going to change.
How many days a week does your staff work, typically?
The back of the house, they work 5 days a week, and they get 2 consecutive days off. And the front of the house are mostly part-timers, and they piece it together the way they like. And we don't let anyone work fewer than 3. Otherwise, it's too, every day's your first day. You only work 1 shift a week. You don't even know what's happened here while you were gone. So it's between 3 and 5.
Thank you.
Of course.
I was here when you were last here, and you just had me wrapped around your little finger.
You were bored today.
No, now I know you're a liar, but apart from that, no. And of course, because of that, I want to know more about your personal life and what's been happening. Will that be in the new book?
I'm going to write a memoir. And I had a brother who killed himself last summer, and he hanged himself from a tree. And he was a woodsman. And I can't get over how rich that is. I'm imagining him picking the tree. And he's the second of my siblings to be dead now. And my parents are winning, it feels like to me, in a certain perverse way. I'm like, wait, why are we all dying? And I'm smiling, and it's sort of lighthearted, only to tell you that I want to find out what it will be like to write about the ripe, red potential of a very juicy family that then doesn't quite make it. A few people don't quite make it. The dissolve, the dissolution, the end and demise of a family that had incredible potential. Anyway, I think that could be very rich. I have to get some food in there because I don't know. People are going to be like, the chef who wrote a memoir that has no food in it? So
No, just read about you.
we'll see. We'll see.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is that separate from the memoir of your mother that you seem to suggest you might write?
It's the only book that I'm on right now, and it's just, as I understand memoir, that it's supposed to be about a finite time or place or event, and so I'm just obsessed with this suicide.
Oh.
And I didn't know him at the end and hadn't spoken to him in many years and was not close, and I have never been more packed with grief at that. So I think it was very rich material to dig into, and I was so intrigued by so many things that, like our parents didn't write to me and say, I'm so sorry for your loss, but they definitely expected me to write to them, which I did. I'm a polite, well-bred human. But I also think that was so interesting too, that the ideas that the parents have lost, and I felt very bereft.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I think there's material there. This has been a very cheerful conference. I just feel like I have to constantly say, like, don't forget I have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming. I hope to see you all again.